Hello and welcome to a different type of video called Solomonarii Unscripted, which it's gonna be a full series on how I develop the actual pages of the graphic novel called Solomonarii. If you're new here, you can check out the playlist Enter the World of Solomonarii. You can check it out. I've linked it in the first comment or the description, and you can check out those videos. Basically, as a summary, Solomonarii is a dark mythic world based on Romanian folklore and mythology, and the main character is Zelemir, who is a strigoi, which is a vampire, and he is from the Strigoi clan. And besides the Strigoi clan, there is also another clan called Pricolici and Vitma Pădurii. Pricolici are the werewolves, and Vitma Pădurii are a type of shape-shifting entities. But for more details, you can have a look in the playlist I prepared. There are 6 videos there. They are the main videos of the channel. But this is gonna be something different. This is gonna be more of a workshop vibes, more like a streaming type of a setup, where I slow down and just actually show you the process of me drawing the pages, figuring out how to draw the panels, how to pace the action, how to efficiently tell the story of Solomonarii. So yeah, at this point in time, the first chapter is done. It is in written form, it is done, and also storyboard wise, there's been progress there as well. I finished the entire chapter in storyboard form. It's gonna be somewhere around 50 pages, maybe 60 pages, depending on some pacing I will need to further develop. As you can see here, this is the first page, and this is the page, this and page 2. These 2 pages I've already shown you in my first video on the channel, where I also made a short motion-like presentation of the panels, small animation. And here I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do further from these 2 pages. So my initial intent, this is obviously what I'm showing you is not, I don't think it's gonna be the exact final form, because things change, designs change, aesthetics change. Obviously I want to keep some consistency. I don't want to be totally different in art style from the first page to the last page. And for future chapters, I mean, I don't want to be a very big discrepancy, but obviously there's gonna be some natural improvements in my art style along the way, depending on how long the process of building such a graphic novel will take. This is my first attempt on creating this type of a project and telling a story in this format. And the necessity was also from a place of need, from a place of artistic need. And yeah, I basically hit a wall there where I've stopped feeling the need to draw, because I didn't see the point anymore of just drawing random images without any relations between them. And so basically I didn't have the motivation to do it. So once I've decided to go on this path and create a comic book, a graphic novel, obviously at many points I've wanted to start this process, but each time it was a big mountain to cross. And yeah, but eventually I've managed to take steps in that direction, and now we're here. And I've drawn these pages, and after I finished these 2 pages, because I had the storyboards for almost the entire chapter for months now, even before I started to making the YouTube videos. I already had the chapter, the story, and the chapter 1 finished, and I've done the 2 pages. It had a different art style, then I've changed it because I wanted to show more with less, let's say. And also the rendering style I did at that point was not as atmospheric that I've wanted, because Solomonarii at the end of the day is a horror story disguised as a humor coming of age story, maybe. But that I don't know exactly. It's gonna be a mixed, but at the core it's gonna be horror, but it's gonna have different types. And yeah, that's why these types of videos that I'm doing now, Solomonarii Unscripted, it's more casual. I don't have some actual points I need to go through. I just talked with you. It's just a stream of consciousness, basically. So compared to the main videos, which are more of a TV series, that was the initial idea for them, and like a season by season, I will create a number of episodes, then conclude it in a final episode and a season, and then after a period of time start working on season 2, and that should be linked to each chapter. So basically once I've hit, let's say 10 videos, then also 10 main videos, then the chapter 1 should be finished drawn. So basically if I start making new videos and not be spoiler free, it should be spoiler free, so then we need to move forward with the story to have the actual chapter 2 in development. Yeah, so like I said, I do apologize if I'm mumbling or going on different tangents, but that's the point of these types of videos. And hopefully these types of videos gonna be a bridge to streaming my process, streaming live, and there we can hang out even more, maybe a couple of hours, and just show you the things, the ups and downs of creating such a story, such a project. It's not easy. I can tell you that it's not easy. It's full of questions that I need to find answers. But yeah. So basically here, as you can see, I have chapter 1, page 1, page 2, and we're going on page 3 now. Here is the sketch for page 3, and this also is, let's say, a version 2 of the sketch, because like I said, I have the full chapter in storyboard already done, but once I've start actually drawing the pages, I will go again and refine even that storyboard into a thumbnail sketch maybe, and that's what we have here. And even this, it may be subjected to some changes, but this version has a much good pace, and maybe I condense some information if it's not necessary to be shown in 2 pages, and it can be shown in 1 page, then it's better. And as you can see, so basically here we have a wide shot of the mountains, of the Carpathian Mountains, and it's sunset. So the sun is going down, and as it goes down, the light at the level of the ground is starting to disappear, and the darkness from the forest is starting to move in. And here in the 4th panel, there is a person near a river who is washing their hands. And here on the 2nd page, we can see up close that this person, this woman, is a member of the village, the Solar tribe. You can check the Solar tribe video for more information on that in the playlist. And this person sees that the sun is going down and tries to reach her ring, which has a symbol on it, a spiral symbol, and she is a bit distracted because the sun is going down, so she is not fully aware what she's doing, and the ring slips into the water, and in that moment she panics. Why does she panic? Why the ring has a spiral? Well, here comes the valuable part of these types of videos. I can go in much deep and explain things that I will not go into the main videos, and obviously I'm not gonna explain for bubbles these types of meanings behind in the final pages. So when this chapter is gonna be published or printed, it's not gonna have obviously this insight. Regarding the publishing, it's gonna be also, obviously it's gonna be digital, and hopefully if this project is going in the right direction and people are starting to enjoy it, maybe, who knows, we can have a print version. That will be the end goal, the dream to have a printed version of it. But the digital version is gonna be on Webtoon, so yeah, this format obviously is not the best for Webtoon. But what I am doing is creating in print version and afterwards just editing in for the Webtoon version. So once I've uploaded, there's not gonna be any problem. and it's gonna be much easier than creating a webtoon version and then going back and creating the print version. So yeah, that's why you're gonna see this type of format in these videos, and maybe at some point I can show you also how I do, maybe just for fun, how I do side by side a finished print page compared to a webtoon page, which is all about scrolling down. It's a long side scrolling down format. Okay, so in page 3 here, the story continues. Basically, once the ring falls into the river, in the same moment, the character, the person, the woman from the village hears a crack in the forest, in the dark forest, and we can see here there is a foot that stepped on a branch, and afterwards she turns around and to see from where the sound is coming, and then an additional sound of scratches on trees started to also hear. She also starts to hear those scratches, and at some point she doesn't even realize that so fast everything is moving that some hands starting to come out between the branches of the trees. So here I can give you additional context. This ring right here is more of a protection amulet that she wears, and everyone from the village wears these types of rings and maybe jewelry to protect themselves from different types of entities that are outside the village boundary, because in this world there are different types of entities that are based on the Romanian folklore. So like I've mentioned, we have vampire clans, werewolf clans, shapeshifter clans, but we have additional clans, and at this point we have 7 main clans. And in the last video I go a bit through those 7 people that represent those clans. But the main clans we're gonna develop further for the moment is gonna be only these 3. So Strigoi, Pricolici, and Bitmapaduri. So yeah, so basically the humans here in this story, they need some type of protection so they can live their everyday lives in these Carpathian forests. So yeah, one of the most important rules in that village is once you go outside for any reason, you need protection from these entities. And this woman had a ring on her, and for a moment of silence, when she wanted to wash her hands, she took the ring off because she's young and she doesn't have so much experience. We're gonna talk a bit more about her in the future episodes, who is she, and in future drawings of the pages and what's her role. But for now, she's just a woman from the Solar Village. Okay, so yeah, after she lost her ring into the water, she panicked, and instantly she started hearing voices and laughs and women singing. And this is part of one of the mythology. Oh, sorry. this is a sneak peek from the next main episode. I'm gonna talk about this a bit later as well. So yeah, the voices are from some beings that are from the Yelele clan, who in Romanian mythology is some type of fairies, let's say, maybe, from the Romanian forests, who dance and sing and attract people, like what's the word in English? I forgot the word. Those entities that live on the sea, sirens, or I forgot the terminology for that. Half women, half fish. Basically, when they sing, they start and hypnotize the sailors and attract them. Basically, that type of ability Yelele have in the Romanian folklore. So she realized in that moment what she did, but without having so much experience, she didn't know how much danger she was. So yeah, and afterwards, in page 3, those entities were just waiting for the best opportunity to strike, and that happened once she lost her ring in the water. So this is the main panels, and I was thinking also to integrate here, besides the panels, the actual forest. So that's what I was starting here to do. And in this episode, the main point is not to finish the actual page in one sitting. It's more about me sharing you my ideas of the story, of the novel, the universe of Solomonarii, why I did what I did, why I use different types of symbols. And I can go really in deep stuff. I mean, for example, in future episodes I can show you what maybe in the main episode I show you just a glimpse or just a minute I'm talking. Here I can go in much detail about an artifact, or who knows, some ability, things like that. So yeah, so the each page, for example this page 3, can go into multiple episodes till it's finished. Why we talk, because more than, let's say, 40 minutes I'm not gonna stay just talking. So on drawing this one in particular is because it's an introduction on one. I've wanted more to discuss this and not show you just a time lapse of how I draw, and then basically it's done, and I just because it's gonna be again like more of a scripted, and I don't want that, because I want to have this stream of consciousness with you. So yeah, and besides this, I can also discuss with you like my inspirations, my philosophy behind why I decided to make this type of graphic novel, approach horror and not different subjects, why vampires and Romanian folklore. But for now, let's just stick here. So basically we're already in 20 minutes, 24 minutes. I don't know if anyone is still here, but if it is, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for enjoying the content till now. I do appreciate it. Even if it's only one person, if it's enjoyable to that person, I did my job. So yeah, but obviously better to be more people. Okay, so here I started to build up a bit the forest. Also the art style, it's gonna be watercolor based, the rendering. So I think it's a good way to tell this specific story. And yeah, let's see here. So drawing the branches and doing the textures, because this is, I already started this, but I haven't advanced so much, just for this purpose, to have some type of content to also show you here, and how things change, how things remain the same, and what's the actual thing. Obviously, I mean, everyone has different levels and experience of doing these types of projects. This is my current level, and as I progress, it will improve, and that's also a fun thing to see for me in the future when I look back at these videos. What was my my pace in progression? How fast or how slow did I progress in creating this? Yeah, so let's try and create some new branches here. So let's see, where do we have the branch? Do we have here? Yeah, okay, have it here. Let's just let's see, I'm just gonna do it. Let's see, yeah, better. So yeah, it's a slow process, and that's why I've compared it to a live stream setup, because usually those types of videos, you can see that how in real time how actually the slow is this. And also, I mean, in this day and age when everything is so fast, content is being created at incredible speeds with the use of AI, and you don't even need knowledge on how to create, because you use AIs for everything. Just tell an AI to do this and another AI to do that, and you create content. But I mean, yeah, even those depends on the quality, obviously, the quality of it. And what I'm not seeing when people discuss this is what actually happens when you start to pick up drawing, and the process of learning to draw. It's not just that after, let's say, 10,000 hours that you put into drawing and now you're an expert drawer or painter, that you just create an image and that's that, because you're not like a printer or a camera. So it also changes how you see reality, and it changes you inside mentally, the process. If you're studying anatomy, for example, if you started anatomy, and after a period of time when you really start to concentrate on each part of the body and how it's structured, you become very sensitive to that in reality as well. You start seeing peoples as different parts that make a whole, and you can quickly see the different types of people, how they look structurally. That changes. It basically changes how you see reality. And using AI in creating art, it doesn't give you that. It gives you just the final product, which is good or bad depending again on the person. It's very subjective. That person which has the video or the image, the content, will not be changed. They will not have that capacity, even if they prompt for 100 hours. They will not be able to see differences with their eyes. And this happens also. I just gave an example for the anatomy, but it also gives you for anything else. If you start to learn how to render different types of materials, then you're gonna be more sensitive in real time in your day-to-day life to those types of textures and materials. This is for my personal experience. I'm not gonna presume that everyone goes through these types of an experience, but from my experience, this is what I've noticed as a side effect while I've started to really dive deep in this process of learning art. Yeah. So yeah, don't know exactly if this happens to everyone who goes on this journey. You can leave a comment and tell me about this. Maybe I'm just full of nonsense. You can write that as well, no worries. And yeah, the process of creating this type of a project also has a lot of benefits that goes in different mediums. I mean, I always enjoyed stories and movies and cartoons and animated content that tells a story since I was a child, and now I also watch videos on how movies are made and how effects are made, how content in general is made, and a lot of insight can be transferred from watching movies and how the directors think to your own creations, to your own process. So basically, I mean, this is a sequential form of telling a story, but even here you think about how to frame the image to conceive a different type of emotion when telling the story. So here I'm trying to create tension because the female character here, she doesn't know what is coming from the woods. I mean, she heard stories about different entities that may lurk on the boundaries of the village, but she didn't encounter. This is her first encounter with things that are not human. And here you only see a foot from behind that was stepping, and as you can see is very gentle. I mean very only the tip of the feet has touched the branch, because it's intentional, because this entity is a predator and they enjoy to torment their prey. And this is intentional, because if she didn't want to make any noise, she had all the necessary abilities to do so. So she decided to step on it intentionally. And afterwards, when she hurts, the villager hurts the crack, this entity continues to torment her by scratching the trees. And afterwards, here we can see that she goes all out. Or does she? We're gonna see, and what's gonna happen in the next one. And again, here thinking about how to turn the page, how to make the reader turn the page, because like I said, this is my first project. I'm learning everything about this. I mean, I've consumed content like this, obviously, but it's a different thing from consuming and actually building it from scratch. And even if you watch tutorials, read books, you still need to develop a sense of pacing, of framing, of why doing things in a different aspect. So here, obviously, this is, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe in the next chapters I'm gonna look back and see these compositions, this way of putting the panels in the frame, and we'll laugh. But for now, I think that it's sufficient to conceive tension and mystery on what's gonna happen, if these hands that's reaching out of the forest will catch her, or will she run? We'll see in the next page. So yeah. Okay, so less talking and more drawing for the next episode. This was an introduction, so I was more about talking. But in the next one, we're gonna go finish the background and finish the panels one by one. I'm gonna start in the next episode, and maybe we finish it in 2. But nonetheless, the thing is, with this episode, I will be able to make more and more frequently than the main ones. That was the idea behind it. So these episodes, because I don't have to edit so much and create a whole arc of showing the content, I just hit record, talk and draw. I can move much faster. So hopefully I'm gonna be able to schedule these episodes each week, and even maybe twice a week. Hopefully maybe twice a week. It's gonna be even better, because the main episodes, as you can see, the time gap between them, it's reaching almost a month to some one of them, which obviously, even for those, it's not ideal. Hopefully there I can also create a more good pipeline to finish those. So maybe, I'm not promising anything, but maybe around a maximum of 2 weeks or 3 weeks at the top between each main episodes. But those are limited to seasons, gonna be limited to seasons. So I was thinking for this first season it's gonna be 10 episodes. So we're on the 6th episode. I'm already working on the 7. And yeah, before we finish, I can give you a quick sneak peek on what's the 7 episode about. Basically, the 7 will be about the librarians of Babariu, which will be developed in that episode, and they will be the gatekeepers of knowledge in Babariu. These librarians will be from the Vitma Paduri clan. They will handle the information in the Solomonarii universe. They will archive, and because they are shapeshifters, they will also be able to go outside the library boundary and actually document the history and from different aspects. I'm not gonna go here deep at the moment. For that episode, I'm gonna keep it fresh. After that episode, when we go back to these videos, I can tell you more. And this image, for now, I'm just gonna tell you, this is not the librarian. That's gonna be a different character I'm gonna develop. But this, I was thinking to be like a statue integrated in a great door, and that door is gonna be the entrance of the library from the school. So yeah, so thanks for listening. And this is also for a future episode, which I'm gonna develop the character that we have seen so far here. And who is she? What's her story? But that's gonna be in later episode, a part 2 episode of the Sorrel Tribe episode. So if you're curious where the design could go, if you go watch that episode, you can have an idea on what's the direction for this character design. So yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this type of format, a more longer, that you can just chill while you may be doing even something else, and just with a glimpse of an eye you check on what I'm showing you, then that's fine with me. If you enjoy it, leave a like, leave a comment. That will help the channel and help the story to develop much faster, I think. So yeah, in this instance, I'm not gonna tell you see you next time, because that it's ambiguous a bit. I'm just gonna tell you see you next week with a new episode. So bye.